our second webinar. Just to remind you that the webinar is being recorded. And I'm here again with my co-facilitators, Carolyn Samuel, Rose Elkati, Jenny Ferris, and we'd like to welcome you to the second webinar. Let's start by getting situated in where we are. So during the last webinar, we introduced you to our design model, basically talking about the different components of the course design. And we also introduced you to the concept of alignment, which means that every component in the design model is integrated in order to facilitate learning. We also talked about your learning aspirations for your students and how to set them up in a way that is clear for you and them. So in this webinar, we're going to be talking about assessment. We're going to be talking about how you and your students will know the extent in which learning outcomes are being achieved. So with that in mind, let's move to what assessment means to you. This is a strategy that we use sometimes, and it's about making associations with a picture. There's not right or wrong answer. So as you start thinking about assessments for your courses, what connections can you make between this picture and assessing student learning? This is a free association. Don't think it through. Type your response in the chat. So what is it about this picture? Just look at it intensively and think about what association does that give you. Ambiguity, confusion. It can take many shapes and forms, yes. Any other associations, connections, different ways of doing things. The idea of flexibility, assessing creativity, nonlinear. Hurts my eyes, it's early, oh, I'm sorry. Learn how to structure associate concepts. Couple of responses more. Okay, so there's some of the notions here in terms of that it can take different forms. There is the ambiguity, the flexibility, and the variety that we will be discussing in this webinar. So what are our learning outcomes? We hope that at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to describe the purpose of assessment beyond grading, and also to apply learning center principles to the design of your assessment plan. These learning center principles will be discussed during the webinar. So we start with one assumption, and the assumption is that assessment has a profound influence on learning and motivation. So continuously in the literature, this connection between the way we assess our students and the way they learn and the type of learning they engage in, it's pointed out continuously. So from the point of view of the literature, this is founded, but also from the practical point of view, it makes sense because, as some authors have pointed out, our students can escape from our teaching, whether we like it or not, but they cannot escape from our assessment. So it makes sense to think about how we can make assessment a good learning opportunity for our students. So what does that mean in terms of course design? In terms of course design, it means that assessment is one of the first things that we think about when we are designing a course, which is a bit counterintuitive. A lot of us think content or how am I going to teach it? So we're asking you to go back and think about assessment first. And then the other aspect is that we need to integrate assessment with all other components of course design. So I'd like to start with a question about purposes of assessment, because that will set the framework for the principles that we're going to discuss. So I think we can all agree that we use assessment to judge and grade students' performance at the end of the course. This is what is known as summative assessment. Can you think about other purposes of assessment? Why do we assess students other than for grading? And type them in the chat. Feedback to give students confidence, go beyond memorization. So the idea of to evaluate the effectiveness of teaching, yes. Using assessment to feedback for personal growth, yes. Yeah. So yes, these are some of the purposes of assessment, and I think you have mentioned them, most of them in the chat. So we, okay, I'm having trouble advancing this, sorry. Provide ongoing feedback to students to guide learning, that's formative assessment. We also can use assessment in a way to motivate students or direct them to the tasks that we think are important, and to inform actions that improve both teaching and learning. So having that broader idea about assessment help us in terms of how we think about some of the principles to design effective assessments. And this is what we're going to be talking about. So the 4 principles is align your assessment with your learning outcomes, allow your students to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways, provide opportunities for practice and feedback, and then a cautionary principle, curb your enthusiasm, be mindful of workload for you and your students, which has proven to be particularly important in the online environment. So let's start with aligning your learning outcomes with your assessment. Is there a good fit between the learning outcomes you want your students to achieve and your assessment methods? So it becomes evident now that the main purpose of learning outcomes is not so much to write them very clearly, but you need to use them. And the reason why we have asked you to write your learning outcomes in such a specific way is because they really guide you in terms of alignment, in terms of the type of learning that you want your students to elicitate, to produce during your assessment. So this idea of alignment between learning outcomes and assessment is key in course design. And it works both ways. As you start working on your learning outcome, on your assessments, you may find out that you need to redesign your learning outcomes and so on. But the more clear your learning outcomes are, the more they will give you guidelines for your assessment. So what are the advantages of that? The advantage is that it will really make your assessment intentional. It will really produce the type of learning you want in your students. And as somebody pointed out, Gordon, I believe, pointed out in our webinar yesterday, it gives you some, provides a way to communicate to your students the value of your assessment. And it gives you some transparency in terms of like, why are you doing that particular assessment? That can be very valuable for students to motivate them. So here's an example of alignment. Can you think about, in what way this example illustrates the concept of alignment? You can think by yourself, or you can maybe type it on the chat. So what is it about this example that demonstrates the concept of alignment? So I don't see any. Okay, so what we can see here is that the same level of learning is elicited by the assignment, by the assessment, than it is in the learning outcomes. So in the learning outcomes, you're able to apply, and you're asking students to apply. That is one of the values of being specific on the learning outcome. The second principle is allowing students to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways. When you focus on your learning outcomes and don't think method first, that you have some freedom to think about alternative ways that students can demonstrate that learning outcomes. So in general, a good assessment strategy has some range of assessment methods, and also allows students somehow to have some choice between the assessment method. Now, you need, again, to temper this through, the complexity and the workload. But it's good to think about what other alternative methods could allow my students to demonstrate their learning. It also makes the assessment more inclusive. And it could be also make it more interesting, yes, getting away from traditional types of assessments. In the resources that we're providing you in the workbook, there are some good websites where you can actually see some examples and maybe get inspired by different types of assessment. So I'd like to go to the next slide. Sorry, I'm having, okay. So if you think about the learning outcome that we had before, students will be able to apply theoretical concept to real world problems. I mean, it's phrased in a very general way, but a lot of you are looking for something like this. So we talked about the possibility of doing a take-home exam with some specific questions. Can you think about some sort of alternative assessments that could fulfill this, that could be giving you some information about this? And I'm going to ask you to, if you have any ideas, to type it in the chat. An actual project in the community, that's great. Any other ideas? Teamwork project, surveys about an issue in the community, yes. Debates, reflection on the process by students. So these are different ways that, depending on the context and the content of your course, you could evaluate the students. And again, you can see how looking at the outcome gives you the freedom to consider alternative assessments. So these are some ideas that we put in, but you're coming out with some very interesting ideas on your own. So that's the main idea. So I'm going to stop talking now. I talk too much. So I'm going to ask you to do an individual reading. I would like you to go to a website that is part of the a web page that is part of our TLS website, and Mariette is going to be putting the link on the chat. Okay. So So when you would like you to look at that particular part of the website and do a 5-minute individual reading. And while you're reading, as you read the examples, think about how is the principle of alignment reflected in these examples? And also, as you go through the examples, if there are methods you will consider trying that you haven't used before. And I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to ask Carolyn if Carolyn, can you navigate through that website for a second?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just put this up. Okay, can I get a nod from my colleagues? Are you seeing the TLS website? Perfect, thank you very much. I'm just going to scroll to the top of the page so you can see what it looks like. It's on the TLS site, it's assessment strategies, and the link Mariette put in the chat is to the example evaluation schemes. So
Yeah.
you should see a page that has that heading, and then if you scroll down, you get to the actual examples.
Yeah, and the examples, you have to click on them, and then for each example, you get an evaluation scheme for, and you have the learning outcomes, the assessment, and also the online tools. So I just can't, please let us know in the chat if you're having difficulty accessing the site. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to take some time just to explore the site, look at the examples, look at how the alignment is exemplified there, and see whether you can get inspired with maybe another method that you haven't used before. So we're going to start counting 5 minutes from now. You're welcome to turn off your screens and take some time. And in 5 minutes, I'm going to call you back, and then we're going to go into breakout room for a discussion based on this reading. Okay? I did not unmute myself. Very common occurrence. Okay, I'll repeat myself again. So thank you. Now we're going to go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And the breakout rooms, we're going to be discussing the questions that we had for our individual reading with colleagues. So with that, I will give you a warning at 3 minutes and a 1 minute. So Jenny, whenever you're ready, you can invite everybody to breakout rooms.
Great, I'm opening the rooms now. See you all in about 10 minutes.
Okay, so we want to ask you a question. Was there a method that did you find a method that you will consider using that you've never used before? If so, could you type it in the chat?
Ria, I seem to have lost my chat controls. I've lost all my controls.
Sorry?
I've lost all my chat controls and all my controls.
Oh. Okay. That
for a bit.
Are you okay? Sometimes they show on the bottom of the screen or on more.
Nope, I can annotate, but it's okay. I'll just hang out.
Okay. So some of the comments in terms of methods, blogging, infographics, the idea of the portfolio. So that's good. So you got a sense of the overall planning. Most of the methods I thought are mentioning in the webpage, very nice things in the combinations, idea of workload. would consider any. Oh, good. So, so I'm glad that you found some ideas to have a discussion forum for students to pose questions and so on. We also wanted to emphasize this is just one of the sites, but in your workbook under references for assessment, you have some interesting websites to look at in terms of inspiration for different methods of assessment, including one that is about McGill professors that is on our website too. So we will take a look at those references if you're looking for inspiration. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor to Jenny, who is going to discuss the last two principles. Okay, so I'm just, there you go.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody, again. So pleased to be here with you all. And we're looking now at the last two principles to consider when we're looking at our assessments and making decisions about how our assessments can be framed so that we can best align them with our learning outcomes. So what we're really hoping that students can know, do, and value by the end of our courses. So one of the ideas is this idea of assessment not only for assigning a grade, as Mariella and you discussed early on, but really as an opportunity for practice and feedback. So this idea of assessment for learning, which gets at this question that we find helpful to, you'll probably have noticed that we ask lots of questions along the way, because reflecting through questions on our practice can be a helpful way of thinking about the how or the why of what we're doing and why we're doing it that way. So when we think about assessment as a means of practice and feedback, one of the questions we ask is, how can you best help students learn how to do well on your assessments? So sort of how do we get from where the students are to how they can really succeed well on their assessments themselves? And this can take a variety of forms that you'll have the chance to explore over the course of the day. So Mariella, if you'd like to move on to the next slide, please.
I will, if you would let me. Okay.
Great. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of this video. And then once I've done that, Mariella is going to hit the play button in about 30 seconds. This is a video that was taken, gosh, almost 10 years ago now, when we were first implementing active learning classrooms on campus. So it's based on a student's experience in a physical classroom, which I realize is not common these days, this semester certainly. So I'd invite you, as you're watching it, to think about how some of the things that the students describes might be implemented within a remote learning environment. And more specifically, I find that, whether we're reading or watching, it can be helpful to have a focusing question, something that we're looking for in the content. So we're going to ask you, according to this student, what are the main benefits of practice and feedback? And I'm just going to turn on the live captioning here. So you should see some captions appearing towards the bottom of your screen. If you find those distracting, you can click on the CC live transcript button towards the bottom of your screen and hide them, and that will hide them for you locally, but other people will still have access to them if they would like. So with that, I'll invite Mariella to start the video, again thinking about what are the main benefits of practice and feedback that the student articulates.
Okay.
The process of evaluation often is just a final exam, or potentially one assignment and then a final exam. So you're not really tested as to the depth of your knowledge or your complete understanding of the material until that final exam. And so often you think you understand something, and then when you're confronted with a question or a certain scenario on the exam, and you think you've answered it, and you get your result back and you find out, okay, actually I missed this whole section, or I misunderstood. Those kinds of things I think can be disheartening for students, especially when that's the only means of evaluation. Sitting in here, and especially the way Professor Piper has used the room and set up all these exercises for us to do each class, it's like we're having mini exams all the time without the grade. So you're you're being forced to look at the problems, to analyze it, to work together, and to hear other opinions, so that I think what happens at the end of the day is you end up having a more complete understanding of the material than you would just on your own. And by having someone question you on what you're saying during the class or during the sessions, you are making sure that you yourself understand. So it's this idea of personal accountability for the material, which I think if everybody sort of takes it on board, it works really well.
Thank you. So this is one of those videos that we couldn't have said it better ourselves. And we were so thrilled when the student brought forward these ideas in the active learning classroom reflection context. So coming back to that question, according to the student, what did you pick up on? What did you hear as the main benefits of practice and feedback? And I'll invite you to share those in the chat. Certainly. So accountability for the material, self-assessment, that idea of, am I understanding what I think I'm understanding? Bad connection, a question is coming up. If that's a referral to the internet connection right now, I would invite Mariette to share the link to the YouTube video for the video itself. If there was any difficulty with the jog on the video, we do have access to that online. Better understanding of the content, sure. So looking at understanding across the time, not only at the very end, and testing students without applying grades, absolutely. So that idea of practice and feedback that we came to earlier. Hyper professor. Oh, the professor's name was Professor Piper. I don't know if that's maybe what you heard, Richard. Sometimes those consonants get us. Set realistic time required for regular feedback before next assessment. Absolutely. So this idea that it takes time to process these things, to have opportunities to really engage and grapple with these ideas before the next assessment. Thank you, Mariette, for sharing that link to the video. And I think it's at the 1 minute 29 second mark in that video if somebody wants to consult the students' capsule again. Catherine's asking how we turn off the transcription function. So if you're finding it distracting, you should see a little button at the bottom of your screen that either says CC or live transcript. Click on the up arrow next to that, and there should be an option that says hide captions or hide transcriptions. If you're not seeing that, another option is you might see a more button that you can then click on the more button to see live transcript.
I think it's with all of my hidden, I think it's with everything.
Oh, okay.
So sorry about that. Okay.
No troubles. I hope it's not too distracting. If it is distracting you, Catherine, I do want to keep it on just for those who might benefit. But if you go out of full screen view on your Zoom, you can sort of move your screen down so that it might be out of your screen view on your desktop itself. Might be worth a shot. Great, so thank you all so much for all those responses. And I've got to say that you absolutely picked up on the things that the student described. And these are things that come through very consistently in the literature as well. So these ideas that through practice along the way and feedback, we can help students to succeed at formal assignments and tests. This can be motivating as compared to what this student is described as somewhat dispiriting if you find out at the very end of the term that you didn't understand what you thought you did. This idea of correcting misconceptions early on and developing student self-monitoring skills. So somebody spoke to this option for self-assessment. Absolutely, so thank you so much for all those comments in the chat. Mariella, if you'd like to scoot to the next slide. This brings us to our fourth Learning Center principle for designing your assessment plan. And I've heard anecdotally that this has been, and I can say for myself as well, this has been a challenging semester. And I've heard both from instructors and from students that sometimes the workload has been really tough. So I wanted to just take a moment to thank you so sincerely for all that you've put into your courses and all the effort, all the care that you've taken to make this semester possible for your students. I just wanted to take a moment to say that. And to think as we move forward towards preparing for the winter semester, how we can be mindful of our workload, both for making it manageable for ourselves as instructors and for our students who are taking our courses, and likely several others as well. So first of all, to keep it simple, we keep coming back to this because sometimes in the online environment, there are so many possibilities and it's very tempting to try to do it all. I feel that temptation myself. So thinking about when we can counteract a little bit and think about what we can keep simple and feasible. So thinking about how, for instance, with technologies, how we can use technologies that students and ourselves are fairly familiar with, and keeping the number of technologies fairly reasonable for a semester, again, recognizing that students will be taking multiple classes and you yourselves may very well be teaching multiple classes in a given semester. Making sure that your assessment plan is manageable for you and your students. So Phil Race, who's an educational developer in the UK, has spoken about the benefits of a rich mix of high quality assessment formats while limiting the overall burden of assessment for ourselves and for our students. So sort of summing it up in this idea of we need to measure less, but measure it better. So really thinking when we have an assessment plan, we're developing our assessment plan about how we can ensure that students have those opportunities to practice and to get feedback along the way, but in a way that isn't overwhelming. So thinking about the number of assignments that students have for your course over the continuation of the course itself. And recognizing that students have different levels of technological knowledge. So some of the workload might not be involved with the cognitive elements of it, but really the nuts and bolts of, okay, where do I save this thing? How do I upload this assignment in my courses? That sort of thing. So just ensuring that we can be as clear as possible with that. And that relates to clarifying your assessment expectations for students. So not only when something is due, but also how much you might be expecting students to spend on it. Asking yourselves, is the weight of the assignment appropriate for the time that students will spend on it? And I'll invite Mariette to include a link in the chat to the course workload estimator. There are a couple of these tools online now, and it can be a helpful way to give a sense of the amount of time that students might need to complete different assessment tasks. So with that, I'll ask Mariella to please move to the next slide. Okay. So as we come towards the end of our webinar, we have just under 10 minutes left here. We'd like to encourage you to keep these 4 guiding principles in mind as you keep progressing on your course alignment plan. So I believe that we've already included the link in the chat to how to access that. If you haven't downloaded it and saved it locally yet, today would be a great day to do that. So you can really start to develop as we work across those different columns. So yesterday, we spoke mostly to the learning outcomes and you explored how you can begin framing those for yourselves. Today, we're adding on that second column, so the major assessments. And you have a number of sources that you can draw on as you develop this. Certainly the conversations in your breakout rooms today, the workbook itself, workbook itself. There are some appendices in there as well that you may find helpful. And I'd like to specifically draw your attention to one portion of the workbook, which is exercise 3. So I'll ask Mariella to move to the next slide. There might be a couple of clicks here because we have some animations. Right, so that's where you can download it if you haven't already. And exercise 3 is on page 6 of your workbook. So there's some guiding questions on exercise 3. And you'll notice that throughout the Course Design Essentials sessions, we've included exercises like this one to support you in preparing your course alignment plan. And this is sort of the instructor equivalent, if you will, to helping your students learn how to do well on their assessments. We're looking for opportunities for practice and for feedback as we go along through these exercises, and certainly through the daily connection opportunities in the afternoon as well, as you prepare to complete your course alignment plan. So with that, I think I do want to, yes, we'll be moving right along. And I'm just going to check the chat just for a moment because I see there have been some questions that have come up, but I see that Carolyn has things well in hand. Thank you. So some questions about reasonable workload and graduate versus undergraduate, how different course contexts and certainly levels of courses may impact reasonable workloads. So there's some ideas in the chat. And that's something that will vary to a great deal, but I'm so pleased to hear that people are thinking about it at this point in the process. So without further ado, I'd like you to take a moment to keeping in mind that different purposes of assessment that we've described over the course of this webinar, and this idea of assessment for learning. So assessment beyond the grade, but really an opportunity for learning and motivation for students. Take a moment to reflect on this webinar, this morning's discussions, and then respond in the chat. What is one of your main takeaways from the webinar this morning? And the reason we're asking you to do this is it's sort of a way of quickly synthesizing for yourself, and also perhaps providing inspiration and motivation to colleagues here as well. So the question is, what is one of your takeaways from this webinar? So Anne Marie is saying the statement assessments beyond grading says it all. Use it with lab instructors, great. Richard, wide variety of assessment methods, absolutely. There are so many, and it can be tempting sometimes to draw on the same ones, and some of those can work very, very well, but it can also be really exciting to have these cross-disciplinary conversations in the breakout rooms and hear about some of those assessment methods that might work well for your own courses and colleagues. Assessment without grading is potentially good, for sure. So often with assessment, it's this idea of, okay, so what are we going to do and how will we grade it? That sometimes that question of, do we have to grade it? It can be an interesting question to ask. Or maybe it's for a very small number of points. Maybe it's grading for completion, or maybe it's purely, the experience for the experience itself, and it's not graded whatsoever. Assessing less but better. Oh, Catherine's noting grading can feel like it gets in the way of learning. That can be really challenging. I think that's where, my alignment hat tells me that as long as we're looking at how we can link those learning outcomes to the assessments, hopefully the assessment opportunity itself will be helping students to meet those learning outcomes, but the grading process itself can be time consuming for sure. Okay, somebody's mentioning to adapt my assessment strategies. Yeah, so just thinking about what we do and how we've done it in the past, how we might do it going forward. From my experience, no grade equals no involvement. So thinking about why students are doing what they're doing, what's in it for them, and how we can make it relevant, whether for a grade, whether for how we can build in some intrinsic motivation, making it relevant to what their lives, careers may look like in the future, linking it perhaps across classes as well. Emphasis on learning, not just grading. Absolutely. Wow, thank you everybody for sharing these great ideas.
That's great.
Yeah. Mariella, if you'd like to move to our next slide, please. So we'd like to thank everybody who showed up today, everybody who showed up yesterday as well, and we're looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. We'll have a daily connection opportunity where you can connect with other participants and the TLS facilitators, pose questions, share ideas, refine your plans for developing your course. I did want to mention that yesterday, one of the participants had a wonderful idea. They suggested that in the daily connection opportunities in the afternoon, we can have sort of topic-specific discussions during the breakout groups. So we'll have breakout rooms by topic for part of this afternoon session so that you can choose the course assigned topic that most closely fits with your interests. So thank you to the person who suggested that. We took you right up on it. And so we'll look forward to that at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. And encourage you to keep tracking with your course alignment plan, to work through the reflection questions in that exercise. And before, oh, I see a question, slides from this morning. The slides will be posted imminently on that same website, the webinar's website, under the Course Design Essentials module. And if they are not yet, they will be posted as well, the recording from yesterday. So that's really where that's the hub for all the materials, is that webinar website. And thank you so much. We encourage you to stretch because we've been sitting now for an hour, and to think about the different other events that are coming up on the events website at TLS that might support you as you prepare for the winter semester. So thank you all so very much. We have 2 minutes left. If you have pressing questions or other comments, you're welcome to share them in the chat. And otherwise, we'd like to invite you to stretch. Mariette will be putting, I think, a link in the chat there. And thank you so, so much for your engagement today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Gordon. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Mariette, I think we can stop the recording at this point as people sort of make their way out.